Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Philly Fan Radio. I'm your host, John Myer, along with Dan Palmieri, and we've got a special episode happening today. A special guest joining us, the Philly sports guy, Jamie. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Jamie, first of all, you and I were talking offline when we were setting things up, and you know that guy, like, hey, I met you before. Yes, I was on the sideline. You were all dressed up, and you were like, hey, do you know who I am? And I'm like, I've seen you before. I can't picture this. It was like probably 3 or 4 seasons ago when we had like the sideline passes. Dude, it's awesome to have you on the show. I know you got a jam-packed day, some awesome things happening. I want to jump into it. I think the first question I got for you is, when did your passion for Philly sports begin?
Birth. I'm.
You
So
came
I
out
grew up
wearing the green hair?
just about. So I grew up. I grew up in a household. My mother and my grandmother both worked at the Spectrum and Veteran Stadium. So I was
Wow.
always involved in sports and like I literally grew up with the Flyers. So I know that when you're 2 years old and your mother goes to work every hockey game, I would sit there and I would watch the television to see if I could see her. Now she worked in the restaurant, so I'm just never going to see my mother on TV. But I was always watching the hockey game, and it taught me how to become a fan. And like I've heard stories, growing up where I taught myself how to read because we would have three newspapers. We'd have the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Daily News, and the Bulletin, the Philadelphia Bulletin. And I would take the newspapers, I'd take out the sports page, and I would sit there and I'd read all the box scores. Even though the box score was exactly the same, I would read all three of them. And I learned how to do like math because I would add up the scores from the periods and things like that. So it was like one of those things where uh, learned how to become a fan just by following when my mother worked. And
It sounds like a new educational thing. Everybody should get the paper, follow sports, so you learn how to read and you learn how to do math.
well, the hardest thing now would be finding the newspaper because they're extinct. but
That,
Yeah, they are. My wife was going to make a collage for me, and she's like, "Oh, I can't find a newspaper." So,
exactly, they're just no longer in existence. Everything's online anymore.
mhm.
Jamie, would you say, were you a Flyers fan first, or Flyers, Eagles, Phillies, or it just all happened at once?
I tell people all the time I bled orange and black before I ever bled green.
Oh, I like that. Okay, well, first of all, if everybody hasn't seen Jamie, we'll put some pictures onto the screen. He like diehard. First of all, I know you as a diehard Eagles fan, and then since I started following you, I saw all the Flyers. You get fully painted up for every Philly sports. It is amazing, and I know it takes a lot of time and effort. And I want to talk a little bit about that in a second. But when did you start getting painted for Eagles games?
The first game that I had gotten painted up for was back in 2000. I want to say it was 2002. I had met my brother out in San Francisco, and it was the Eagles game against the 49ers at I think it was 3Com Park at that time. And we had tickets at the very top of the stadium, had this big sheet that we were going to show because the Eagles were going to win the NFC East that week. And that was the year that Terrell Owens had a 99-yard touchdown on us to win the game. We lost that game 14-7. Uh, but we that was the first time I had ever gotten painted up, and it was nothing like it was, you know, the way it looks now. It was like my first time just throwing paint on, and my brother got painted up with me, and it kind of just evolved from there. It's like we would go to an away game every year, and I would paint my face, and then it grew and it grew. And next thing you know, I started getting mohawks, and the mohawk came around 12 years ago, and now it hasn't left. It's like I live with a mohawk now.
Well, you're pretty much a Philly symbol. You're the epitome of passion we have here. So don't ever shave it off.
You know what? Every once in a while, I bet it. I bet somebody, but they usually have like some beard that they don't ever want shaved off either. So it's because my hair grows like weeds. So I tell you, I literally just shaved today. I already got some stubble coming out. So but it's like if it was gone for a minute, it'd be back very quickly.
Jamie, what's it like, or what's the process like for you to get painted up for an Eagles game? Because you also wear the pads as well.
I do. The whole process takes about an hour. I wake up in the morning, and depending on what the night was the night before, sometimes it's a little tougher than others trying to get up. But depending, like if it's a 1 o'clock game, I'll get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. If it's a 4 o'clock game, I get up about 7. But ultimately, it gives me about an hour, and put on the pads. It takes a big process, so I have to do half of the paint, then put the pads on, then do the rest of the paint. Because if I try to do all of the paint, it just smears when I put the pads on. So it's there's a little bit of a process that goes into it, but ultimately it takes about an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, depending on like if I'm at the Super Bowl. I take a little bit of extra time because I want everything to be right. I'm very
Mhm.
meticulous with my paint. And I feel like that's part of the image that if you just throw the paint on and it looks half-ass, then people are going to treat you that way. And I'm like I said, I'm real big on making sure that I'm going to bring it every play of every game all day long, just because that's how I want my teams to play. So I want to make sure that everything is perfect. And I spend a lot of money on the paint because of two reasons. When I put it on, I want it to stay on. But when I want it to come off, I need it to come off.
So, how does the family feel about you being such a big TV celebrity? Because you can't watch an Eagles game without you being in the stadium, jumbotron, on TV like Fox or CBS.
They don't ever really notice. Like when I say my immediate family, my kids are not big sports fans, which sounds really funny, but it's when you think about it, it's not surprising because when they were growing up, I like I would be sitting there watching a game, and it would go from quiet to a scream because we scored a goal or we did something, and I would scare the kids. So their mother would say that I scared the sports out of them because of that. Eventually, I wasn't even allowed to watch any games in the house anymore. I had to go out to watch them. Uh,
You had to go to the game to watch it. Like, I just got to be there.
and I'll be honest, you know it's kind of funny when I was probably about 10 years ago. Like I said, I was going to away games and going to a couple of away games a year, but I was not going to many home games. I was playing slow pitch softball, and we would go back to the bar afterwards, and the bar would give me my own television to watch because I'd sit there like this, and I'd start yelling at the television. Well, the bar started to notice that not only would people come in to watch the games, but they would come in to watch me watch the games because I would start to yell things at the television that they would listen to, and then they would use later calling into WIP or 97.5 to uh, talk about. And it wasn't like just stuff that you talk about like right after the game. It was like second level stuff where it's like, why is this guy not in on this play? If I know if I
hmm
know he's not there, I know what the play's going to be. That means they know what the play's going to be. That means it's not going to work. And so it's those are the types of things that I would start to yell about, and then people would repeat. So I would hear my sentiments on the sports talk, usually on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, from people within the bar.
That's awesome. Jamie, this season has been phenomenal. I mean, it started off in Brazil. You were there, first of all. I saw all the posts, I saw everything happening, all the commentary that you were providing over it. I know you made a comment that the only thing is they didn't let you go in with the face paint.
Correct.
Why was that?
So they are not, they do not ever serve alcohol at soccer games in Brazil, just because of
Okay.
way too much going on. The NFL required them to sell beer. at this game. Because of that, they used facial recognition for everybody, and the makeup does
Oh.
not work for facial recognition. So, similar to I am not allowed in a casino painted up without special security around me because the facial recognition will not pick up the makeup. Is very similar. So we pled our case. The NFL had 6 or 7 guys with me to plead the case. Like literally, the NFL is talking Portuguese to the Brazilian army, saying, "Hey, listen, we understand what the rules are, but if there was one person you were going to allow into the stadium, this would be that guy." And they were like, "No." And you just don't argue with the Brazilian army in Brazil. So we took it off, and ultimately, it actually endeared me more to the Brazilian people. I left that. I left Brazil as the most viral thing in Brazil. They were sharing my post where I was telling them after the game, it's like that I had such a great time in Brazil and it was so amazing, and all the things that we had heard about, oh, that this was going to happen and this was going to happen, we can't wear green, blah 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 blah, all of it was just bunk. All of it was bunk. And that, even the fact that I wasn't allowed to wear my face paint into the stadium, hey, listen, I'm in their country. I got to follow their rules, but it doesn't even deter the great time that I had. That video was shared like 100 million times in Brazil. So it was like one of those situations that I still have to respond. I have to translate my English to Portuguese to respond to some people who still email me and text me, telling me that Brazil loves me, they want me to come back, and they're glad I had such a great time there because that video is still circulating.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because the players came out like weeks before and saying, "Oh, we can't leave the hotel room, and we hear about all this crime and everything." So, you saying that is really it's reassuring, and it
The,
shows the culture out
the
there.
NFL was being overprotective. So, and that's what happened. They
Understood.
they told their guys, like, listen, we do. it- NFL players drive on a different highway than us normal people. Those
Oh
guys are
yeah.
driving a million miles an hour, and they feel they can go anywhere. You can't just go anywhere in Brazil. It's like I explained it to people like this: if you were coming from overseas and you're coming to Philadelphia, I'm not telling you to go to Kensington. You know, same
Hmm.
situation here. You can't go up into the favelas because in the favelas, it's they don't have police, so they self-police. And if you're up in that areas, it's a very poor neighborhood, and you're not supposed to be there, and they know that. So they make sure that you know that you're not supposed to be there, and that's how they police. So you don't go into the favela. At least you don't start to go high into the favelas. You go
Hmm.
to your areas, you stick where you're supposed to, and everything is fine. This is not a it's not a first world country here. They are more westernized than people know. I found out there specifically, the United States is number 1 in watching American football. Number 2 is
Hmm.
Mexico. Number 3 is Brazil. I didn't realize that
Wow.
there are more people that watch football in Brazil than watch it in Europe, and that surprised me. I met professional football players down in Brazil, American football players. I met a lineman. He was a little bigger than I was, but gets paid to play football down in Brazil, and it was eye opening. It was like, wow, because I'm in Rio de Janeiro. He knows the games in Sao Paulo. He was going to be at the game. Told me about his football team. The whole football team started following me because I did a quick little interview with him. It wound up being just an eye opening experience, and I learned a lot more about Brazilian culture when it comes to American football in comparison to, like, you just think, oh, okay, we're just having the game down there. It wasn't a it was very well planned by the NFL. They knew they wanted to have a game down there because people would go to it. And that stadium was full of Packer fans, not because the Packers traveled down there. Most of them are Packers fans because of the colors. They have the same
Oh yeah.
country colors, and they told us that we can't wear green. The national color is green. Everybody wore green. So there was never an issue or problem. I wore green the entire time. They loved me. The fact that I was up at Christ the Redeemer and I did an Eagles chant, that was everybody looked at it back here like I was being disrespectful. And I tell you, I had to get talked into painting my face to go up there because I thought it might be considered disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
But they said, I was told, nope, go do it. Definitely do it. This is something that Brazil wants, that they wanted this. So when I went up there and I did the Eagles chant, that went viral here because everybody's like, yeah, hold on. We sent the idiot Eagles fans down to Brazil to represent America. But truth of the matter is that Brazil looked at it as we love the passion, and passion is what drives our sports in Brazil. And not many people could see that unless you were there.
Jamie, Brazil was a huge eye opener for the NFL for us to experience. First game out there. And I want to get to basically, obviously, the Super Bowl run here. But the first question I have for you, the Eagles go 2-2 into the bye week. What was your immediate feeling for the season?
Frustration. It was a little bit tough.
Mm-hmm.
We said that on our show time and time again.
I tell you, I remember walking back. It was so hot in Tampa, and that Tampa game, losing that Tampa game wasn't a surprise. After the hurricane came through, it was so ungodly hot. The Eagles were so underprepared for that game. They
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have the fans. They didn't have really enough water. You could tell that they just did not want to be there, and they didn't care. And it was like they didn't even have shade. Like they were trying to figure out how to shade people. They were getting these big pieces of cardboard to hold up over players. It was so ridiculous in terms of how underprepared they were for this game, and it showed. It was like, okay, we got our butts whipped by a Tampa team who was just a lot more prepared because they live in Tampa. So it's yeah. Then you go. I remember doing that and saying, "What did we just watch? Like, what was this? Like this? You can't be this underprepared for any game in the NFL. Like, you almost have to have all this stuff with you at all times."
Yep.
And then the Cleveland game being the next game after the bye, and it's such a dogfight. It's as funny as that
Mm-hmm.
sounds because they're the dog pound. But it was absolutely a dogfight in terms of there. It was a battle of the two defenses, and we were able to come out on top. And then I am a firm believer that our season does not begin ever until we play the New York Giants. I know everybody hates the Cowboys. But our season begins when we play the Giants. And it's been like that for years. And I'm just a firm believer. So once we played the Giants and we smacked them around like the stepchild that they are, I knew at that point that there was going to be a lot moving forward, that we were going to just that we could be something special. I had said from the very beginning of the season that I thought that we were going to go up against Detroit, and that was going to be the Super Bowl. That whoever won that game was going to win the Super Bowl. And it just so happened that we didn't even get to see Detroit because of all the injuries they had in Washington. They ran into an offensive buzzsaw at the time, and Washington was able to beat them.
Yeah, we pretty much said the same thing. It was pretty much the matchup everybody wanted to see, with the Lions, before they really got decimated. And it was, I think we kind of came out to the same conclusion that whoever wins that game is going to go on to win the Super Bowl, because neither of us were really sold on the Chiefs the entire time. The Bills, if they went a little more inconsistent. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. And with the Giants, I think we've talked about it several times. We remember, and I honestly can't remember what year it was. It might have been 17, where
The 63-yard
Jake
field
Elliott
goal.
makes a six. Yep, yep. And then it's like, oh, all of a sudden this team is for real. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's the way it is. I feel like, and every year after that, like if you remember, even going up against that next season after we win the Super Bowl, it's the Giants game that was late in the season that started our 6-0 run to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's always been the Giants have been the catalyst. even even 2 years ago when we were not doing so well and we play against the Giants, we have to play them twice in 3 weeks. You kind of saw the writing on the wall that our season was not. We won on Christmas Day and then lost the last game of the season. You could tell we weren't going to go far in that playoffs. And it's I still get sent the picture of me in Tampa Bay looking because it's funny. I get to be the face of the fan in Philadelphia a lot of the time, and the face just doesn't lie. You know what
Yep.
I mean? There was just nothing that we were
Mm-hmm.
doing in that game, and there was no way to cheer. Like, how do you cheer for something that's just not happening? It was just such a frustrating situation to be a part of, and then of course that got immortalized by Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
I think
So
that's one of the
nothing like
biggest
playing the
things.
Giants.
I think for this season, we should start playing the Giants as a home opener, and let's just kick off the season right away so we don't have to stress about anything.
Actually, I don't mind not playing them as the home opener because obviously you want to be able to get some things right before you go after, like I said, before you want your season to begin. So having them playing them game 5 or game 6 is perfect for me, especially since we don't play preseason games anymore. The
Yeah.
the first
Mm-hmm.
4 weeks of the season is preseason that counts.
It
You
feels
know,
like the years have gone on that we actually haven't played our division rivals into the end of the season, back to back. Like, Giants, Cowgirls, all those at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the season kicking off. Jamie, the Super Bowl, man, I got to know from you, what was that feeling like?
everything that you saw on television times it by 10. Like it was really amazing that, like, obviously being there 2 years ago and watching that all occur and then being there and having to walk out of that stadium defeated. Like it was such a, like, we were ahead by so much during that game, and you know he walks off at halftime and he's limping off. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes is limping off, and then comes back and does everything that he does to win that game, and it's just so defeating. And then now it's like, okay, they didn't deserve to be on the same field as us. And you could tell that the Eagles were ready to just play. They were going to play their best game of the year. And it happened. It was just so
Mm-hmm.
it was. I mean, we started partying in the third quarter. Once they scored that touchdown, and I'm saying they scored to make it uh, 34-6.
The dagger by Smith, right?
Well, the dagger was great to make it 34-0. But
Yeah.
once Kansas City scored the touchdown,
Oh,
because
okay, gotcha.
and the reason why
Mm-hmm.
it was that touchdown and not before then was because we were still going to go for the shutout. We had never had
Mm-hmm.
seen a shutout before in the Super Bowl, and this defense was worthy of it. So like it was, are they going to shut this team out? And then they scored that touchdown. I was like, okay, now it's time. Now it's time to celebrate because there's no way they're coming back here. We're going to win this game, and there's just no way that the Chiefs are going to come back, 35 unanswered points and win this game.
Yeah, I can't remember a time ever in Super Bowl history that they pulled the starters.
I do remember. I mean, I think that the Denver got beat 55-10 one year.
Oh.
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, There's been some lopsided games in the '80s that I kind of remember
Mm-hmm.
where everybody, the starters got pulled and stuff like that, and that was just a testament to, hey, everybody on this team gets to play now because we we did this as a team. And I thought that was great by Sirianni, where he's like, "Are you sure? Are you sure we're done?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're done. We're up by 30 points. There's only 5 minutes left. We're done. You're going to let these other guys get to play." And I thought that was great by Sirianni to include everybody in the game, to make sure that
Hmm.
everybody got a piece of that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I take from the Super Bowl is everybody, the Chiefs were playing towards Saquon. We're going to run. We're going to totally dominate it. We got to stop Saquon, right? Oh, we did great. We held him to 52 yards, or I think it was 52 or 57 yards. Okay,
Hmm.
you held him. You actually had your whole game plan for your defense around him. Guess what? We beat you elsewhere as a team. And just to see the team come together, whoop their ass for the game. I think there's no fan out there on your team that you don't want a lopsided win, because you want a great Super Bowl. Man, I wanted them to kick their ass and totally dominate and start resting people in the third quarter, just like they did. So I was
Hmm.
excited about the entire game. I mean, yeah, Dan and I were partying here together, and obviously Eagles fans were nervous as heck going into the game, and we're nervous for the first quarter to second quarter. Oh no, is it going to come back? And then you just had this feeling of overwhelmed that we were just gonna. This is our game. This is our time.
That first penalty, I feel like that
Yes.
everybody on the Eagles was like, okay, we're not going to let the refs do this. It's not going to happen. And they destroyed them. They destroyed them afterwards. I even like, so they said that, when you look back at it now, the refs, I think the refs were told after that first call, listen, you guys got to put your whistles away a little bit. You got to let them play a little bit. Because there were certain things that were called all year long that was not called.
Yep.
Like the one iconic picture of, Jalen Carter's hand in his face, in the face,
Hmm.
that had been a 15-yard penalty every time.
Yep.
So things like that weren't called afterwards was like, just like, okay, this is now more of, they were told to put them all away, that
But
they
it was a
can't.
game then. It was actually a dogfight game then, and we weren't dependent upon the refs to make stupid calls or anything like that. And that's what made it an exciting game. Like, okay, they didn't call those stupid plays, or it felt like old school football.
And C.J. Gardner Johnson said it 2 years ago. Had they played on a normal field without it being so
Hmm.
slippery, our defensive line would have crushed their offensive line, and that's what occurred. There was no stopping us. They had no answer to our offensive line, or to our defensive line, and we were just getting in there every play, and they were manhandling that you know that offensive line, and so I kind of fully expect. I think that moving forward, I know that we just lost a couple of guys to, on free agency, and they were going to get paid. I mean, I knew that Sweat was going to go
Hmm.
because he just hired Drew Rosenhaus while I was on Radio Row. So it was like, you knew he was going to go. I thought that the other guy was going to he was going to wind up, he had a great Super Bowl and he was going to make some money, and he wound up going as well. But we signed Mekhi Becton. I figured we wanted to keep the offensive line intact, keep that going for the next couple of years and such. So I felt that we kept the people we needed to. They had to re-sign Bond. You can't have an all-pro year and then go somewhere
Hmm.
else. There's no way that happens. And how we knew that, he had to pay some money a little bit, and probably more than he wanted to, but you don't have an all pro, a first team all pro, go to a different team the next year.
Dan and I were sweating it out. In fact, when we saw if the contract extension for Barkley, we were like, okay, yeah, hey, this is great. He deserves it. But the one person that Dan and I wanted to be signed was Zach Bond before free agency. And the next day after Barkley, he was signed. And I was like, okay, the rest here, you know what? I'm feeling okay with the rest and how it goes. And you started talking about some of the free agency moves they did. Milton Williams, Patriots, Rodgers went to the Vikings, and I am personally a little concerned. I mean, Slay, he went to the Steelers, and now where's our corners going on to it? Burks is gone. Sweat, you mentioned, he's definitely was another one that's going to get paid. What is your feeling here on free agency that just happened?
I so when you win a Super Bowl, there's going to be guys that get paid.
Yep.
Everybody, the fact that our entire offense is intact is perfect as far as I'm concerned. The main components of our defense remain. You know, the two cornerbacks, the two safeties, and the two interior line defensive linemen. Uh, will BG come back? I actually am thinking BG comes back for one more year.
Yeah.
As do I.
You guys think he's coming back? I mean, he literally tore his tricep again in the Super Bowl. And I mean, he is a total beast. He's going out on top right now. And to do another one, I don't know. I mean, it would be nice if he would, to be honest. He's got the heart for it. And I know he came back specifically this year, did so much to get back into it. But you both of you think he's coming back?
So I happen to be in the very unique position that before the season began, I got to talk to Brandon. We did a commercial together, and it just so like I said, I did an interview with him the day that he had the surgery on the tricep. I happened to speak with him. He was at an event that I was at. Uh, and the day that they announced that he was going to be playing for the Super Bowl, I was with him. I was at an event he was with. He was just knowing him and knowing how big of a competitor he is and knowing that he's still got a little bit more left in the tank.
Absolutely.
I feel like when and now I'm not going to compare the two completely, but Jason Peters, I feel like players like to stay 2 years too long past their prime. Jason Peters' case, he stayed 5 years too long.
Yep.
I don't know that Brandon Graham, in the way that they do the system, I think that he could start this year and then play another 2 years, and then those 2 years be past his prime. Because of the way that they do the system, he's not, he's always fresh. He's playing like 40% of the snaps. And when you're doing that and you're staying there and you're being the leader, the veteran leadership on a defense that is very, very young. I mean, we were the youngest defense in the league, and just so happened to be the number one defense in the league. That you want some of that veteran leadership there. You want him to be able to share some of the things that he knows about the players, how, teaching them how to do the banter, and just getting on people's skin and things like that. I think that he absolutely comes back. If he doesn't come back, he may be coming back as a coach because I think he likes being on the field. He didn't leave the field the entire time when he was hurt. He was there every game yelling at these guys and sharing with these guys what he was seeing off the field even. And I feel like that was part of the growth that the defense had by having that vocal leadership off the field. That I think that he deserves to be back on the field again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree. I mean, the fact that after the Super Bowl, they kind of asked him about that and he waffled a little bit on it, I think was telling because, he could just easily say, oh, I'm done. I've accomplished everything I can, but he's just, the fire is there. And like you said, it's kind of hard to put the fire down. And I think I told John that the only way that I think he doesn't come back is if his wife steps in and says, no, you're done. You're done. You need to spend more time at home.
And no wife does that because they have certain plans that happen while they're not there. You know what I mean? It's like, listen, go out and play, go do your thing. Everything's working great without you here. The moment you're here, because that's what happened. I mean, listen, I've got to meet his family. He loves his children and stuff like that, and his children are young. I feel that players, when they have kids and they're getting ready for that transition, they need to be able to put that fire somewhere else. His kids aren't old enough to really play the sports yet that he may want to be involved in. And I think that's what's going to need to happen when they become of age to be able to play sports and do the things that he wants to be involved in. That's when he's going to retire. When the family kind of takes over the life rather than football. Right now, football still is his life.
Jamie, what are your feelings on the latest coaching staff that has joined the Eagles?
I they remained in house. I was almost positive that we thought we were going to see, uh, somebody come back and be the offensive coordinator. The fact that they
Did that
elevated,
start with an F?
yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
Frank
just
Reich.
check it.
Yeah, I thought Frank
we
Reich was going to come
we
back, and
thought so too.
and I had mentioned it. I had mentioned it before. I thought that, I mean, they offered a lot of money to try to keep uh, Kellen Moore, and he still was like he was ready to go. And it was time for him. You know what I mean? I wish him the best of luck. He's got a tough job down there
Mm-hmm.
with New Orleans. So I hopefully they give him the time to actually try to figure it out down there, because it's going to take a couple of years for that to work out. The fact that they kept it in house is okay with me. I mean, obviously they had to change so much from the previous year, going, and this is now the fourth coordinator in 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
It makes things challenging. So there's going to be a lot of similarities with the way that they run the offense from last year to this year coming up. I'm okay with it. I mean, obviously we were going to lose some pieces because Kellen Moore was going to take everything he could with him, because he wants to try to recreate as best as possible. But ultimately, I'm okay with this until they show me otherwise. I'm fine with how they choose coaching. The Eagles have been great about choosing coaches. Can't argue with that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not picking wide receivers in the first round of the draft, but picking coaches has been a strong suit for them.
So you were a fan of Gannon and Johnson?
I was never a fan of Gannon. I felt that Gannon uh, was really like he needed to blitz more.
Yes.
That was the problem with
Yes.
Gannon.
Or at least change the freaking defense after the first 10 plays when it's not working.
Yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
just didn't have the guys, and the fact that you would have people go into coverage, like, you don't have defensive tackles and defensive ends go into coverage. You just don't do that. And I was firm on that. I'm like, you got to be able to blitz a little bit better. Their blitzes were very scripted, and the offensive lines could
Mm-hmm.
pick them up very easily. And I just didn't like how Gannon did things. Johnson, I felt that if he micromanaged everything. He was a first year defensive coordinator who just could not, like, he just, everything was like he tried to just micromanage everything, and I think that it overwhelmed him so much so they had to let him go in the middle of the season, and then it was just a complete, mess. It was just a complete mess. So it was like,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody liked Patricia at all, and they knew that it was over at that point. So when you have those things going on, and then the offensive coordinators beforehand, like, it was just like, yeah, they didn't have an identity. They were winning games similar to the way the Chiefs were winning games this year,
Yep.
2 years ago. It was just like
Mm-hmm.
smoke and mirrors. And then the 49ers came in trying to win the NFC championship from the year before. And the hit, it was that one hit towards the end of the game. And I'm not talking about the Dom moment. I'm talking about that one hit where you could tell, like, the running back was just running at like 70%, and the linebacker
Mm-hmm.
crushed him. And it was like, that's what happens when you're tired after playing 3 games in 11 days and you're not 100% into the game, and they are trying to win the NFC championship and they're playing a regular season game. You know what I mean? It was like, that was the difference, and you could tell at that moment in time, I feel like that was the moment that everything fell apart for the Eagles, and it did. They could not recover from any of that afterwards.
Yeah, even though they were winning, we kind of felt the same way where yes, they're winning, but it wasn't convincing. None of it was convincing. And you listen to the radio, it's all about, oh, well, they need to win by this much because you need the style points and everything. And as a fan, you're like, winning is winning, but there was just something. There was something there that's like, this team isn't right. And we slammed. I mean, I guess me more than John slammed. It's like, when do you take some pride? where's the leadership coming from? And that was the most critical thing of Hurts that I said was, when do you step up and become that leader? We wanted a rah-rah quarterback out there, punching people in the face. Where's the coach? And it just didn't happen. And which is the main reason why we all said coming into the season, I'm like, wow, this team on paper could be a juggernaut, but is the leadership there to do so? And obviously we know how the season went and everything worked out well, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well, and that's where the understatement of getting a Saquon Barkley really
Mm-hmm.
shines. The fact that he was the leader. Some people, and there's not many people in the world that do this, but some people walk into a room and there's an immediate attention command that goes to them. He is one of those people. And the fact that he's as humble as he is, he's as soft spoken as he is, but yet commands that type of attention. Immediately, all the little things, all the little drama pieces that happen, even with AJ Brown reading a book on the sidelines, you know what I mean? All that stuff disappears because the attention is commanded by this other presence that is so
Mm-hmm.
far superior than all the little piss ant stuff. It's like, yep. Somebody mentioned to me, somebody much more intelligent than I was, that said elephants do not worry about the movements of ants, and
Hmm.
that is exactly what happened. Is that we, as a team, we were the elephant, and the drama that the media creates are the ants, and you don't worry about that. You always just move forward and keep doing what you're doing because we have the right answers already. We don't have to worry
Mm-hmm.
about anything else. And that's where I feel like this team was at the entire year. And it really maybe came to fruition starting in the bye week. That even though they
Yeah.
didn't have such a great game against the Browns, they were able to win that game. Then we were able to start to put the offense together. And we're running too much. We're running too much. Next game, we won the game by passing. You know what I mean? Is that what you wanted to see? You know what I mean? Like, and
That was the Steelers game, right?
right, but that moment where it's like, he didn't say it loudly. He didn't
Nope.
yell it. He's like, "Is that what you all wanted to see?" Was enough of, "Hey, we're here. We mean business. We're winning games, and you're still crying. Stop it!
Mm-hmm.
Stop
That's
it!"
Jamie, you were talking about Saquon and how humble he is. He's actually here from our hometown area. And there was an event this past weekend at the PPL Center where he was actually. So, March 9th has now been officially Allentown and labeled a Saquon Barkley Day. He was given the keys to the city, which they can't actually remember the last time they gave the keys to the city for that, and Whitehall and everything. And Barkley comes in. He's got the hat on. He actually, you talked about commanding the presence. He is humble, but he walked in very humble into it. And he walked to his seat. He kept the hat on. He was trying to keep the attention actually away from him, even though the attention was on him. He got up and he spoke about 10 minutes, 10 entire minutes of it, given, very just thankful to everything, where he's come, to his Whitehall coaches, into it, to the keys to the city, everything on it. His teammates were in the conversation so many times, and that was it. That was perfect. Like, he didn't drag it on. He just wanted to give thanks back, but he demands that presence at the same time, which is really cool. Like, everybody, he's a player you can't hate. I wanted to see him so successful on the Giants, but I hate the Giants. So why he's so sick? I wanted him to run for touchdowns, but I wanted him to still lose, right? And that, bring him to a hometown, to the Eagles, was just like, it was a magic in the making, man.
Well, at the parade, I got to meet his father, and as I took a picture with his father, and his father used his camera to take a picture with me, I noticed, I'm like, Mr. Barkley, that's the wrong green on the back of your phone, because he's a big Jets fan. so,
Oh.
so
Oh.
I had the, but I mean, he's from Allentown, so being a Jets fan isn't so unrealistic,
Yeah.
And I know
Mm.
that, but of course, I had to. I'm like, well, he's not.
That-
He was never going to win any championships up in New York. So, uh, I, but that I mean, it's amazing because I know that he was not. I know he grew up not as an Eagles fan, so it's fun to see him here and so beloved in his town. And I feel like that there's been a lot of people there. I mean, isn't Dotson also from that area? Maybe a little bit further south from you guys, maybe
Yes,
Quakertown or
yes,
something.
yep.
yes.
So it's there's a lot of guys that have come up out of that area. I mean, I went up there a couple years ago for the celebrity softball tournament, the Devonta Smith celebrity softball tournament, which I'm
Hmm.
hoping I'm trying to do everything I can. I want to be in that home run derby this year. As the Philly sports guy, I'm working out every angle I can to try to do that. I don't want to play against those guys because I don't want to hit the softball and hurt one of them. But because they're football players, they're not softball players, and I played softball, so I don't want to hurt them. But I definitely want to get in that home run derby and show them that this old man can definitely beat all those guys, all those athletes swinging a bat. Uh, but I mean, that has been a little bit of a hotbed for NFL players. There's been NFL players that have come out of that area and that region frequently. So I I feel that he's just another one that's part of a long lineage from that area. So the fact that like I said, I was further up the streets up in Wilkes-Barre, where I was at a parade when this was all going on, and the parade, half the people were down in Allentown for that, and the other half were at the parade.
Hmm.
So it was a tough choice to figure out which way to go. I probably would have been there if I wasn't at the parade. So it's I'm glad that he's getting all the accolades. But like I said, being such a humble guy and being just like I said, he's just we saw it the one game where he's like against the Giants. He's like,
Yeah.
you could break your record right here. He's no let the other guys eat.
Let the young dogs eat. And the cool
Hmm.
part is Barkley was also Penn State, so he stayed home. He stayed in the area, and I think it's just it's like a story in the making, man.
What Disney movies are made of.
He's the man that broke Hard Knocks, pretty much.
They're not doing it this year, so because nobody wants that shit to come back as bad as it just did.
Hmm.
Well, I'm surprised that he even still has a job. Like, how do you have a job after that? Like, it's you know,
Yeah, no kidding.
the owner, like, how it's like, really, like you still are going to allow this to occur. But uh, you know what? The Giants always have the right answer.
Yeah, and they were trolling him because they gave Darius Slayton the same exact contract yesterday as the Eagles gave Saquon Barkley. So basically, they allocated their money to a guy that can't even get more than 500 yards a season.
Good for them. Good for them.
Yes, exactly.
Money well spent on it. Oh, so Jamie, before we actually wrap things up, I want to talk about the upcoming season. We talked about free agency. We know who we're playing. We don't know when. Our home games, obviously, the Bears, the Lions, the Broncos, the Rams, the Raiders. Obviously our NFC East counterparts, the Cowgirls, the Giants, the Commanders. The away, the Bucks, the Packers, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Vikings, and the Bills. What are your thoughts or predictions on this upcoming season? Yes, we are way early on it, but we got to start sometime.
And we're absolutely going to hold you to this even before they sign any players.
I'm going to take notes because I want to go on FanDuel after. No, I'm just kidding.
So I have us kind of at 12-5. I feel that there is going to be a little bit of transition. I those first four
Hmm.
games, I first off, I feel like that we know when the first game of the season is going to be. It's September 4th. I think that there's only two
Yeah.
teams that we're going to play. We're going to either play Washington, which is who I actually expect us to play, or we're going to be playing Detroit. Those are the only two teams that I could see in
Right.
that position. I feel that we're probably going to have a later buy this year because it usually flip flops when you go from one to the other. So we're going to have to get through those first four games and figure it out. And I think that it's possible that we could start off 2-2 again. The reason being is that these first 4 games now are the
They're the
preseason that count.
preseason games, right?
They're the
But they count.
preseason
Yeah,
that count.
yeah,
And it takes a minute for us to get our identity together and things of that nature. Could we go 4-0? Possibly, but we're playing a number one schedule. We are the Super Bowl
right.
champions. Everybody wants a piece. Everybody wants a piece. So I feel that we're going to have a little bit of a time trying to get our identity, but I'm okay with that because I want our best games of the year to be at the end. I don't want us to play our best games of the year in the beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
season. So I want us to find our way and figure out our identity, and then have our bye week somewhere around week 8 or week 9, somewhere towards the end of October.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, start to go on our run, start to figure everything out and have everything in place so that we can go back on our Super Bowl run. I have us right now. I think I go back to exactly what we said before. I think Detroit's going to be a tough out. I think that
Mm-hmm.
they are going to wind up winning the conference, and that we're going to have to go through Detroit this year. And I think that that's going to be a really tough game. And so I still got us. I still got us going to the NFC Championship game and going up against Detroit and watching how that game unfolds. Can we repeat? Absolutely. Is it a foregone conclusion? I don't believe so.
Well, Philly fans, if we go 2-2, us Philly fans are very patient and understanding, so we'll be okay over here. The sky will not be falling.
You know what though? But after the year beforehand, I think that there's a different feeling of us going 2-2 this year in comparison to the way it was
Oh,
last year.
absolutely.
After
Absolutely.
losing so poorly to Tampa the year before in the playoffs, and then winding up going back to the scene of the crime and getting the same type of demolished, there was a
Mm-hmm.
feeling that everybody had that that came forward. We brought back history is kind of what it was, and that we felt the
Yeah.
exact same way after losing the playoffs that game, and then we had to stew in it for a week. So that's the difference here, where and that was the biggest thing they talked about at the bye week. That last year was last year, this year is this year, and that was the biggest thing that they mentioned during that bye week was that you gotta let the past go. That we are not that team last year, we are this team this year, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody bought in. And I feel like that these guys are young. Yeah, when I think about and hearing the stories how Vic Fangio was forced out of Miami. Well, when you look at
Yeah.
that defense is all old. They're veterans. Well, veterans don't like playing for Vic because Vic demands a certain level. That's why Huff never got on the field because he was a veteran who felt like he should be treated like a veteran. So he's got
Mm-hmm.
all these young kids out there, and certain people can handle it. Slay was able to handle being a veteran and dealing with Vic Fangio because, hey, listen, it could always get worse. You could always have Patricia back. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Slay
Yeah.
Slay was big on that and understood. So it wasn't the biggest of deals to have. He's like, okay, I can deal with this because he wants excellence. He wants to push us and push these young kids. And that's where I feel like certain coordinators in general, are meant for older or more for veterans, and some are meant more for younger group. Us being the youngest defense in the league, and still going into this year as the youngest defense in the league.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to still be able to demand that excellence. That the defense is going to have to carry us a lot this season because Barkley, I almost want Barkley not to touch the ball till week 6 because he's had a lot of
Yeah.
touches. He's had a lot of different time. He's got to be. I want him in the cryogenic chamber every day.
Yep.
Just healing his body 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I need that because I don't want him to get the Super Bowl hangover. Take your time. Get him involved in the offense further down the line. Use some of the younger guys. Use Gainwell. Use
Shipley.
Shipley. Will
Shipley,
Shipley.
yeah.
Hey, I'm big on Shipley. You know what? When he got that finally, he got that touchdown. That was just amazing just to see him do this. I think 12-5 is 100% doable. I'm actually comfortable with 12-5. I do feel it will be the Lions. They're due, right? They just were a little decimated this past year, which we all thought we were going to go against them. I do definitely feel the Super Bowl, everything on it. I agree with you on Vic. He was very upset at the Super Bowl of them getting 22 points in the second half. He was very critical. And you know what? Anybody that takes that wrong, he demands exactly like you said. He demands this perfection. He demands hard work out of you. And I think that just instills them into the team. And I'm okay with that. In fact, I do feel the first few games, Vic's going to be kind of getting to know some of the new players and how they play because that is their preseason.
Well, and he set the mindset for next year. Like he did that at the parade. Listen, go celebrate. But I want you guys thinking, how do we get better for next year? There is no that this year's over now. We
Yep.
won. Woohoo. Great. Got it. Now we worry about next year. And there's something to be said for that. That's just putting the bug in your ear. I want you in the books. I want you looking at the film. I want you learning from your mistakes so that you guys all come back better next year. You were the number one defense this past year. Great. But this new year coming up. We are all tied for first before the games begin. So it's like if you want to remain number one, you got to put in the work to do it.
Yeah, and that was the most, like you mentioned with Jonathan Gannon, that was probably the one thing that really stood out is that the culture of the defense was, yeah, we were getting sacks and they were pretty good, but there was no attitude.
We
There
weren't
was
getting
no,
sacks. We weren't getting very many sacks with Gannon.
well, the year that they got 70,
Yeah,
it wasn't the Super Bowl year though.
yeah. That was what right the year beforehand, the year before the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
The Super
yeah.
Bowl year, what we get like 23 sacks in total.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
It's
I
just
mean, it was the attitude. I mean, the off coverage. It was just lackadaisical. And then all of a sudden, you come to this year, and it's like, holy crap! This is a defense that you can be proud of. This is a defense that's smacking people in the mouth, and we don't care. And it was so refreshing to see because we had such, we had so many years of, they were okay, but it was like mediocrity. And then, yeah, like you said, the older players in Miami are like, oh, well, we don't like Fangio. Well, we'll take him. No problem here. We need that. We need someone to get in your face and create accountability at least.
and not only that, he's like, I'm not trying to be a head coach again. This is my last stop before I'm done. So I'm here for as long as you want to keep me here. And I love that. There was a reason why he was the highest paid coordinator in the NFL. And that was the biggest reason why I thought that Frank Reich was coming back, because he tried to be a head coach. It didn't quite work out. Some people are meant to be coordinators. He won a ring with us as a coordinator, and that this could be his last stop. That we could have the same guy for a number of years, because we're going to lose.
Yeah.
If we have a similar offense that we did last year, we're going to lose this coordinator. This is going to continue.
Yep.
But we also learned this year that it's not just whoever the coordinator is, that this is also Nick Sirianni, and Nick Sirianni has a big part in this. The tush push. You didn't realize that the tush push happened back with the Colts. That's where that tush push originated. So the moment that they came out with that, they were very successful with that there. The
Yep.
fact that they're trying to block it now, it's not going to happen. They can't stop that play for thousands of different reasons. So
It's ridiculous.
ultimately it's going to remain, and everybody's going to continue to cry about it.
Zero injuries. Zero injuries doing that. And we play the Packers. And I saw a report we should tush push every freaking down just in there just to be we average 3 yards per put. I mean, like I would do that shit. That would be funny.
Yeah, but realistically, it's like if we weren't to do that push and just do it as a normal sneak, we would do the sneak. Instead, they want people to jump back over the line again because they feel that that's the play where people do get hurt all the time. So it's like this. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think that it's absolutely going to remain, and we're still going to be great at it.
Yep. Well, Jamie, I got to wrap things up. Before I do, where can people find out more information, get in touch with you, follow you? Where's all your socials, man?
You go on any social media, any platform, big or small, and go to the Philly Sports Guy. You will find me. I'm there. You can Google and just put face paint Philly guy, and you're going to see my face show up there. I am everywhere, it seems. Some of it's done with smoke and mirrors, but yeah, it's like I do go everywhere, and I'm spending, like I said, I'm going to a Flyers game tonight. I'm going to be down at spring training in a couple of days. So I'm
Oh
literally,
wow.
I literally do everything, and I try to be everywhere I can.
Uh, well, Jamie, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome, man. We got to
Yeah,
do this
absolutely.
again because I think I could just continuously talk all day about this.
That's the one thing I love doing. I love talking about sports. And you said, "Oh, this is going to be a half hour." I'm like, "No, it's not."
Well, I was trying to be respectful of your time. Dan and I go for 45 minutes, maybe 20 of his ranting and everything. But seriously, this has been a pleasure. We got to jump on a bunch more calls and do more recordings with you. At least some quick stuff. Like, all right, what did you think about this play? But Jamie, thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Go Birds, man. This has been awesome.
Let's go.
Go Birds.
I'm all ready. Let's get this season started. Let's go.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, everybody, this has been the Philly Fan Radio. I'm your host along with John Myer. Joining us was the special guest, the Philly Sports Guy. Jamie, thank you so much. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notify because guess what? We're out of here.